Can we begin by just getting your reaction to what I just explained there, this call regarding the double standard? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, first of all, I must say that our thoughts and prayers are with those sisters and brothers of ours in Gaza. Rules-based order is very important to all countries. It's a yardstick for us to operate on. We are working and advocating for a rules-based order when it comes to several conflicts around us. And adherence to rule, international law, is very important. But when it comes to the situation in Palestine and in Gaza, we see a number of violations. And to give some examples, we have the provisional decision of the ICJ, International Court of Justice, ordering a halt to Israeli operation, which is not being exercised. We have the UN Security Council resolution calling Israel or calling both parties for an immediate ceasefire, which is not being adhered to. We have, as the conflict in Gaza drags on, we are seeing still decisions to expand settlements in East Jerusalem. And to all of these, unfortunately, the international community or a majority of states in the West remain silent. They do not raise their voice on these issues, but when it comes to other conflicts or other potential frictional topics across the world, be it in this part of the world or between Russia and Ukraine, they talk about adherence to international law and adherence to United Nations Charter. These principles are very dear to us. We are also adhering to these principles and international law as Turkey, but we also deeply believe that we should follow these rules in a standard and consistent way.
Ambassador, what we have seen is calls for a ceasefire consistently failing, and at the same time efforts to achieve some kind of hostage release and ceasefire deal also failing. So what is Turkey's role in advancing a viable solution moving forward?
There are, from our vantage point, three dimensions to this conflict. First, the humanitarian aspect. And there are 2.2 million Gazans now cornered in Gaza under very dire humanitarian situation. Many innocent people have been killed. We have just left 200 days mark behind. We have death toll getting close to 35,000. 70% of them, or more than 70% of them, are children and women. So the humanitarian dimension is very important. So we first urge for an immediate ceasefire. It's already delayed. It should have been much earlier. And we should have been at this point at the United Nations Security Council resolutions decision point much earlier. But this is the top priority. The second priority is, from our perspective, an unconditional flow of humanitarian aid to Gaza. This is important because we have been unfortunately seeing the weaponization of food, electricity, and humanitarian aid. This is of critical importance because we see now famine and we see epidemic diseases in Gaza. So this is an important second step. Of course, there are hostages and prisoners on both sides, so we are calling for a release of them. But the top priority is, and I should say this in a very clear way, that we can no longer suffice with managing the consequences of the situation in the Middle East. What we need to focus on is a two-state solution. That's going to be the permanent basis, and that's what the Turkish government, President Erdogan, Minister of Foreign Affairs Hakan Fidan, is supporting and advocating for.
Ambassador, help me understand Turkey's position here. We've just seen President Erdogan meeting with Hamas's leadership. That perhaps reflects Turkey's ongoing efforts to be a mediator in this conflict. But at the same time, the president has called Hamas a liberation group. The West calls it a terrorist organization. So what's your view? Is Hamas a liberation group or a terrorist organization?
Hamas is a liberation group. It is a resistance movement because they have been, if we can go back a couple of years back, they were the elected government in Gaza back in 2007.
Can Turkey be a viable mediator, though, if the president's position is that what the West believes to be a terrorist organization, he calls a liberation group? That's not going to fly in the United States, Israel, or anywhere else.
Our intention at this point in time is to facilitate an immediate ceasefire and a move towards a two-state solution. So it takes, of course, the agreement of both sides to this conflict to choose a mediator. They can work with a couple of mediators. But what we are trying to do from our side is to be helpful, is to contribute, and is to urge all sides, including Hamas, to exercise restraint. We are also doing the same at a regional level because the more this conflict in Gaza drags on, the bigger the risk of a spillover of the conflict in the region. We've just seen the escalation of tensions between Israel and Iran. Also, in that regard, we both engaged Iranian authorities, but also by establishing dialogue with other parties, such as US and some others, we urged Israel directly to exercise, indirectly to exercise restraint.